In his final night before he left office, Governor Schwarzenegger commuted the prison sentence of the son of former Assembly Speaker Fabian Nunez, who had pled guilty to taking part in the killing of a college student. Fabian Nunez's son and a couple of his roommates and a couple of his friends had gone to a party at a fraternity house in San Diego, near San Diego State. Apparently had been told they couldn't come in, left, went back, ran into a bunch of other kids, and there was a big fight. Several people were stabbed. Schwarzenegger announced his move, commuting the sentence of Esteban Nunez in a bunch of 11th-hour press releases that he sent out to reporters. He also announced he was giving some other commutations and pardons, and he gave some really nice government appointments to some of his political allies and to the spouse of his chief of staff. Esteban Nunez had been sentenced to 16 years in prison for his role in the 2008 stabbing death of Luis Santos near San Diego State, but the prison term was commuted to 7 years by the governor. Schwarzenegger said in a statement that Nunez, although he was involved in the fight, did not inflict the fatal knife wound to Santos. He said that he did not discount the gravity of the offense, but given Nunez's limited role in Santos' death, as the governor put it, and considering that he had no criminal record before, he thought the sentence was excessive. Fabian Nunez and the governor were quite close after the governor was elected, and Fabian Nunez was the state assembly speaker. They passed the state's landmark global warming law. Nunez is also a business partner of the governor's chief political advisor at a big consulting company called Mercury Public Affairs. So what happened with this week?
Today, the San Diego District Attorney's Office filed an unprecedented lawsuit. This lawsuit seeks to reinstate Esteban Nunez's 16-year prison sentence imposed by a Superior Court judge here in San Diego. A sentence that was more than cut in half by the former governor's last-minute commutation. Today, once again, we are seeking justice.
That is San Diego County District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis on Wednesday of this week. She's asking a state court to overturn Schwarzenegger's decision. The civil lawsuit was filed in San Diego County Superior Court. Dumanis said at a news conference on Wednesday that under state law, a governor who is considering a commutation has to talk to some of the victims, the families. She filed this under Marcy's Law. Earlier this week, she was on KFI with John and Ken and talked about exactly her position on Marcy's Law.
Well, Marcy's Law was an initiative that was passed overwhelmingly, by the way, by the people. Our office was a big supporter of that. What it did was give a right to the victim and the victim's families to be heard, to, have an opportunity to talk to the DA, before any agreements are made, any plea agreements are made, also to talk in court at every important stage of a hearing or proceeding in the criminal justice arena, and at every important stage of a court case, and every pre-release kinds of hearings. So under Marcy's Law also what it provides is the DA can now file a civil lawsuit on behalf of the victims if they want you to do that.
She says that Schwarzenegger and his people actually made an end run around the court when he did this commutation. She says her lawsuit would reinstate the 16-year sentence. Now, the thing is, Schwarzenegger's not in office anymore, so the lawsuit has actually been filed against Governor Jerry Brown, the State Department of Corrections, the state prison warden, and Esteban Nunez. It was filed on behalf of the victims, Evan Henderson, Keith Robertson, and Brandon Shear. They were all badly hurt in the stabbing. And the lawsuit asked the court to issue an order preventing anybody from letting Esteban Nunez out under this reduced sentence. Evan Henderson, as I mentioned, was badly hurt in this stabbing. His dad is very upset about this whole situation as well, and we'll hear from him in just a couple of minutes. But here's Bonnie Dumanis explaining what Governor Schwarzenegger should have done.
If the governor had followed the Marcy's Law, he should have contacted the district attorney's office and asked for input either verbally or at the very least in writing. He should have made contact with the families of the victims, Luis's parents, and the other boys, the boys themselves and their families, and gotten input by way of at least a statement outlining, what they thought about what should happen, as well as the defense. And then, the governor should weigh all those things and make a decision. And, one of the things we've been pretty clear about is that the power of the governor is constitutional. It's not the power we're challenging, it's the process. And because you have two competing constitutional rights, you should balance them, and the opportunity to be heard should have been made available.
She says if Schwarzenegger had talked to the victims, had talked to the boys who were stabbed, had talked to their families, then she wouldn't have been able to take any legal action, even if she didn't like what he decided to do. She made very clear in her news conference that her office is not challenging the power of the governor to give pardons or commutations. Schwarzenegger spokesman Daniel Ketchel is declining comment. He has nothing to say. A spokesman for Governor Brown. Again, I mentioned that this is actually filed against Brown because he's governor now. His spokesman is not talking either. In an interview with Newsweek magazine and in several other locations, several other interviews, Schwarzenegger has defended the decision that he made about commuting the sentence at the very last minute. He said he was helping a friend. Talking about Fabian Nunez. He said that he knew the younger Nunez well, knew Esteban Nunez. He says he felt good about his decision and acted because of his working relationship with Nunez. He says in the interview, he said, well, hello, of course you help a friend. How does Dumanis feel about Schwarzenegger?
Well, I think the insensitivity is something that, doesn't sit well. When this actually happened, my response was, and it still is, first of all, it diminishes the justice for Luis Santos and for the other kids that were involved in, and it keeps getting lost that these, that Henderson and Robertson and Scher, they were seriously injured. Two of them were stabbed by Mr. Nunez. And what was pointed out in the commutation was this minimizing Nunez's role by saying, well, he wasn't the stabber for Luis. And first of all, they were operating all together, which means he's responsible just like anybody else. But he nearly killed two other boys.
And Luis Santos' mother, Kathy, was at the news conference with Dumanis on Wednesday, and the poor Santos family.
Arnold Schwarzenegger showed more compassion for a killer than for any of the 4 victims that night. He insulted victims everywhere when he favored a murderer over the rights of the victims. Our son's heart was severed, then he bled to death. Arnold feels good about it. He won't apologize for commuting the sentence. He feels just great about giving the killer a break because he knows his daddy. He disrespected the whole justice system, all for a lucky killer with political connections, so he can get out early and go do it all over again. Schwarzenegger's well-publicized confessing remark that, well, hello, of course you help a friend, is a straightforward admission that he abused his power. We support the district attorney's office and plan on restoring justice to all of the victims of this crime. We all deserve that peace of mind, and most certainly, Luis deserves better than what he got.
The Santos family has filed a separate lawsuit that challenges Governor Schwarzenegger's decision. That, again, was Kathy Santos, who is Luis Santos's mother. Evan Henderson and his roommates Keith Robertson and Jason Fiore were badly hurt in the stabbing, along with another young man. Evan Henderson's dad talked to us earlier this week, and we'll hear what he has to say about this whole situation coming up on the KFI Sunday Morning News. We're talking about San Diego County District Attorney Sandy Dumanis' decision to file a civil suit that would overturn former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger's reduction of the prison sentence of the son of former Assembly Speaker Fabian Nunez. Esteban Nunez, in the death of a college student in San Diego, the stabbing death. Evan Henderson and his roommates, Keith Robertson and Jason Fiore, along with another man, Brandon Scher, were all badly hurt that night. Of course, Luis Santos was killed, stabbed in the chest. His heart was severed, according to his mother. Bruce Henderson is Evan Henderson's dad. He's a writer. He had a great article that he's written. It's in the Daily Beast, and it's called "Arnold Pardoned My Son's Attacker" by Bruce Henderson. If you want to go look at that, it's amazing. He talks about getting a phone call in the middle of the night. He lives in the Bay Area. A phone rings, and he finds out that his kid is badly hurt.
That 3 a.m. phone call that no parent ever wants to receive, I got, and was told that he was bleeding internally from stab wounds, and this is my son who's away to college. I live in San Francisco, and he's down here going to San Diego State. First of all, obviously, I had questions about what stab wounds, but what they told me was that they had to stop this bleeding, and they had no idea what they were facing, and they were rolling him into surgery. And how soon could I get down here? And I was on the first flight out of San Francisco and walked into Scripps Mercy about 8:30 in the morning, not knowing at all that he'd made it through surgery.
Can you imagine that? Phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and your kid's supposed to be safely away at college, and you hear that your kid has been stabbed?
Well, the doctor in the hallway, still in her scrubs, said that he was one lucky boy, not once but twice. Esteban Nunez stuck a knife in him in the back, and this without any warning or any exchange of words at all. My son had originally thought he'd just been pushed, and he turned around. When he turned around, Esteban Nunez buried the blade into his stomach, lower and abdominal wall, and miraculously, both thrusts with the knife missed vital organs by just an inch or so, and she said he's one lucky boy.
Henderson, in his article in the Daily Beast, said that the night had started with Evan, Luis, and their friends doing what college kids do on Friday night sometimes, drinking and partying. And he said in the early hours, his son and his roommates were talking in front of Cox Arena on the San Diego State campus. Then they split up. Luis and Brandon were accosted by 4 men a few blocks away. He said that the boys had arrived from Sacramento the day before. They were upset at being barred from a fraternity party. They went to a friend's apartment, drank some rum, this according to Henderson, and some beer, and then talked about beating people up and even killing somebody. They had knives with them. Henderson says that his kid's lying there with all those injuries, and he couldn't believe later on when he found out that Esteban Nunez's lawyers were going to claim it was done in self-defense.
Believe me, that was a difficult pill for me to swallow, knowing what I did about the circumstances of the case. And the DA was convinced that, the evidence would show that Esteban Nunez stabbed my son. And in fact, in the plea deal, Nunez ended up admitting that he was the one who knifed my son. So all of this eventual, clemency and commuting of the sentence that Nunez got for the fact that he wasn't personally involved in the killing of Luis Santos, I say, but for the grace of God, he could have easily killed my son. And so, this is not a guy to give a break to.
Henderson said that after Nunez and his friends went back to Sacramento on Saturday, they found out that somebody had died, that, of course, being Luis Santos. He says that Nunez and one of his friends, Ryan Jett, who was also charged in the case, went to the Sacramento River, set some clothing on fire, and threw their knives into the river. He also says that Nunez told friends he would claim self-defense, as he did, and he said his father could get him off. And then a few days later, according to Henderson, Nunez sent a text message to one of the other people saying, "Gangster rap made us do it, LOL." Henderson talks about what he felt like when he found out one of the people involved was Fabian Nunez's son.
I knew the guy was a powerful guy, but what really got me, and look, kids, I'm not making any rash generalizations here, but I had no idea what Fabian Nunez would end up doing to defend his son, who was frankly a wannabe gangster and a would-be murderer. And first of all, he went out and gave press conferences on the courthouse steps saying that his son was innocent by reason of self-defense, and that infuriated me. And then, of course, at the end, after we did think some degree of justice had been done with this 16-year sentence, Fabian Nunez got his buddy Schwarzenegger at the last minute to issue this commutation.
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
Devastated me, and I must say my son, too. He said, "Dad, it's like I was assaulted again." Thankfully, my son, Evan, did recover and does not have any physical limitations as a result of the attack. He, I think, missed 3 weeks of school and then was back in the classroom, and but for the grace of God, we could have lost him. But he said, "Dad, it's like I was assaulted again. It's like these guys did it to me again."
He says, he knew who Fabian Nunez was. Henderson is a writer himself, a journalist, but he said that he'd never had any clue that Schwarzenegger and Nunez were that close.
Well, I knew that they had worked together to get the passage of the California Clean Air Act, and I know it was considered the political crown for each of them in their terms in elective office. So I had that background. I didn't, quite get, obviously, at the time that none of us thought that governor and Schwarzenegger would reach out and cut this his son's sentence in half. I mean, the DA of San Diego County, who should have known, and in almost every other case before a governor's office does such an action, they check with the local authorities, law enforcement, prosecutors, and they say, "We're considering doing this. What's your opinion?" And they did nothing. It was all behind the scenes, smoke-filled room. It's not as if the governor doesn't have the power to do that. We all understand the governor has that power. But under Marcy's law, which is to protect the victims and their families, there is notification, advance notification required. In other words, they're supposed to give us the opportunity to speak and to protest if need be, and present evidence. The San Diego DA said we would have presented a heck of a case for why the governor shouldn't do this. The only thing Schwarzenegger relied on was, the Nunez side of the story.
Again, Schwarzenegger in a magazine interview said, "Well, hello, I mean, of course you help a friend." As far as the lawsuit filed in San Diego County, a spokesman for the ex-governor declined to comment, and a spokesman for the current governor, Jerry Brown, who is actually named in the lawsuit, also isn't talking.